Hello, and welcome to the very first podcast of the Dakota Boys Talk Movies. I am your host, Steven, along with my good bud, a man who knows too much, Dakota. Dakota, anything you'd like to say? Introduce yourself.
Well, no, not really.
Okay, well, we are doing this podcast because, gosh darn it, there is just not enough people out there doing podcasts and such on movies. So we are attempting to fill that void. Alright, not really. We're hoping you do enjoy it, though, and we figured we're going to talk about movies anyways, so we thought we might as well throw us out there in the hope that we can be a unique voice in that space to some of you. I would say that we are very different than many in that space, in that we're not your average city folk. We're, in fact, quite the opposite of that, and I'd have to say I'm proud of not being a city folk. I don't know about you, Dakota.
It's okay.
Would you rather be a city folk? Dakota, I want you to be honest right now. Do you hate the fact that you may now forever be known as a Dakota boy? Even though it's your name?
I was already called that, so... I was called that before it was fashionable, okay?
That's true, you're like, I was Dakota. Well, were you Dakota before it was cool? Technically, that would be the Native Americans.
Yeah,
well,
I suppose.
You fit that too, though. Man, you get all the glory. I got nothing. I'm just a pasty-skinned chubber. All right. Well, I have the body for radio. Dakota has the voice. So there you go. Anyway, we hope you enjoy yourselves and have a little patience with us, because this is really, we're kind of learning as we go. We are not professionals by any means of the word. And hopefully, as we keep going, we'll be able to advance this podcast. But, hey, you got to start somewhere, so here we are. Ta-da!
I like to think we're helping these people while they're helping us.
There you go. It's like, it's therapy on both sides. It's like, we're helping you help us. Oh, I don't know what I'm saying. On that note...
Moving on.
Moving on. That was a beautiful segue. I guess here we are. We're the first episode. Today's episode, first episode, premiere event. Yeah, we're going to talk about movies. That's why we're here. And we're going to talk about the movies we're excited for this summer. Because, well, it's finally, I don't know. Here it's hot today. It finally was kind of hot. It was windy, but it was still hot. In fact, I think our entire state was in a fire warning all day, which is always exciting. So,
which is still in effect until 8 o'clock.
Yeah, well, yeah, got a little bit of time then. So, there you go. So yeah, we're just going to talk about the movies we're most excited about this summer, some predictions we have on them, because our predictions will be spot on, I guarantee. They're almost not predictions, they're almost more fact in that regards. And some that are, I don't know, on the bubble. I got some that, I desperately want to be good, and not just because I'm paying, $10,000 a movie to see them at the movie theater, but I just want them to be good. I don't know if they will be. You're probably in the same boat as me?
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I had something to say, and then my mind went completely blank.
It's fine. You're a male. For some reason, when we're thinking, nothing else can happen.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of there are probably more movies coming out this year that are somehow related to something I've loved from my childhood.
I would agree with you there. I know what you mean, because I'm sure you're referring to, ones we'll get into, Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Whereas Jurassic Park basically defined my childhood in that I was I want to be a dino nerd now. And oh, that's an Ouranosaurus, and things like that. And then, yeah, Terminator. I'm guessing that'd be another one.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know what else. I suppose the comic book movies or those things that are.
Well, I always kind of had a soft spot for the Fantastic Four. Mostly because of the Thing. I mean, what teenager couldn't sympathize with this dude that wasn't some brain or wasn't the cool guy that was getting all the chicks. He was just this schmo that well, he was pretty ugly, but he was tough and he was dependable. Yeah,
he was beautiful on the inside. I'm beautiful. I'm beautiful, big man. Yep.
That is that, and then of course, one of my favorite animated movies of all time, Peter Pan.
I'm with you on that one.
Oh, also, Hook, a huge fan of when I was little, and we're kind of getting the Peter Pan Begins this.
It's
year.
true. We'll have to talk about Hook later because I was thinking about Hook the other day because of Pan. But I think before we get into kind of our whole summer events that we're looking forward to, there's just a few news bits I caught this week I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. One would be, I'm really excited about this, I don't know about you, is Steven Spielberg coming on to direct the Ready Player One movie, which I think is also hilarious because he's referenced in that book like multiple times in his movies. So that was one thing that really stuck out. I think that's cool. I mean, if you're going to have a movie that's all about the 80s, who better than a man who really defined the 80s in a lot of ways with Indiana Jones, E.T. What else did he have in the 80s that was really... I guess, Close Encounters would have been more late 70s.
Yeah,
I mean, he was involved in, like, Poltergeist. Was that 80s?
Yes. Oh, way to pull out the obscure.
I'm just gonna find him. Dang it, he was the 80s. No, but that was just really cool, and that could help. Maybe by then, him and John Williams will be doing music together again too. Who knows?
What can you say? Spielberg was to the 80s for pulp culture what Ronald Reagan was for politics. You can put it that way.
There you go. He was the Ronald Reagan of Hollywood. Wait, that doesn't work. Wait, Ronald Reagan wasn't... Anyway. Alright. Another thing I caught this week, and I think this was this just yesterday? Sometime this weekend, the Ryan Reynolds pic with him as Deadpool laying all beautiful in front of the fireplace. We're excited about that as a Deadpool guy.
I was, and then for some reason I was just taken back to this old photo I had seen of Burt Reynolds in that same pose. And then I was like, oh, gee.
It was kind of that kind of was a Burt Reynolds type. Well, I know we had talked about this a little bit earlier. You like the fact that he's going to have the white eyes, which is something that they've never done with Batman. Because Batman has white eyes.
They briefly did.
That's true in, like, Dark Knight. They kind of made people feel good by giving him those weird... When he stole everybody's cell phone codes or whatever. But I always thought it'd be cool if they could figure out a way to make Batman have white eyes. So I was kind of cool. I thought that was cool, too, how he'll actually have that. And, I mean, obviously, for people who don't realize it, Deadpool is basically like a Spider-Man knockoff, but instead of being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, he's like...
The merc with the mouth.
Yeah, he's a merc with the... He's a mouthy anti-hero, basically, is what he is. The other thing I saw this week... was they came out with a teaser for the new James Bond film. Bond 24, I think we're on now?
Holy cow, yes. It is.
Yeah, crazy. Of course, when you think about the fact that James Bond, they've been making James Bond movies since, well, I don't know about your dad, but since my dad was, like, in junior high. So, that's pretty crazy. Like, wasn't Dr. No, like, 1960 or 61 or somewhere in there?
Yeah. I want to say 62.
Oh, maybe. Okay. I knew it was somewhere in that time period. But, I mean, that's long... I mean...
Yeah.
To be around that long is pretty crazy. Not many movies... Because, I mean, when you think about it, James Bond, in a sense, has never been rebooted, even though how many guys have played him? They don't really reboot him. They just kind of like, here he is again, type thing. So...
I think, well... The whole Casino Royale movie was like, oh, this is how he got started, but you never did actually have a whole, we're gonna redo this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, like what I find confusing is like how Skyfall felt like a reboot, but by then Daniel Craig was on his third James Bond, and so it was like, I felt that was very distracting, and it made me almost dislike Skyfall in a certain way, because I'm like, they're like restarting when he's already James Bond. It just felt funny.
It was just the fact that it was very different style-wise.
Yeah.
It was much more serious, I thought, whereas going back to what made Bond great, you had that old cool car with the machine guns.
Yeah, I know, I know a lot of people knock on Cars 2, which, I get it. It's Cars 2, it wasn't the greatest movie. But what I thought was cool is how Michael Caine was basically like the James Bond in that, and they had him look like the original James Bond car, that Aston Martin, and he had guns pop out of ridiculous places, and things like that, shoot oil on the road, and yeah, it was just kind of that fun thing like that. So anyway, I thought the Spectre trailer, to get back to that, it was your classic teaser. It just made you think, I wonder what that's going to mean, and wonder what that's going to do, and will Jaws be in this? And because everybody wants Jaws to come back,
Everyone for the last 20 years is hoping Jaws would come back.
We want him to come back, he's fell in love with that nerdy, weird girl in Moonraker.
I must be like the only one rooting that Oddjob comes back.
That's not true, because you're looking at another person wanting that. But I don't know. People are so sensitive these days. They'd probably be like, it's racist. Because he's a little person and Asian or something. Who knows. Anyway.
I thought he was pretty cool.
He was cool. But
he had style and skill.
Somehow the sensitive people would be all over that, even though he's cool. Anyway, we'll get into our main topic of the podcast, our 5 anticipated movies of the summer. And what we're going to do is just kind of go back and forth, starting with number 5 and work our way to number 1. So I think we'll have Dakota. Why don't we have you go first? So your number 5 anticipated movie of the summer. Drum roll. Number 5.
And that would be Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four, huh? Well, there you go.
I wasn't too pleased with who they had in this movie, but at the same time, it looks a little more in line with what was going on in the comic book, and I kind of like that.
On the topic of casting, would you say when you heard the casting for the first time around they did Fantastic Four, were you excited about that casting?
I was, just because, well, I think the only problem I had with that was Jessica.
Yeah.
Owen Gruffudd. You could buy him as this smart dude that, builds awesome machines. I liked him. I thought he was a good Reed Richards. It's just that the movie around him didn't work so well. And I liked Chickless. Oh yeah, he was the heart and soul of that movie. Definitely, he really owned being the Thing, and you really bought it. And I liked how he wasn't CGI. Yeah, because I think they made it work. I think the makeup people made it work, where even though he wasn't CGI, and you got to remember that was like post Lord of the Rings, where Fox could have went, well, they pulled off Gollum, so maybe we could pull off Thing. And I liked how they didn't. And that's what kind of worries me, because I think this new Thing is going to be CGI, isn't he? Yeah, he's totally CGI. They probably had the actor doing, motion capture. Right. But which Jamie Bell would know how to do from Tintin, because he was Tintin. So he'd be familiar with it. He learned from the best, I guess, in that sense, from Andy Serkis. But I don't know. The how everything is becoming so CGI infested has really made me start to appreciate practical effects more. Like Interstellar, I was super mixed on. I kind of left going, I don't know, whatever. But I did like the fact that nearly everything in the movie is a practical effect, including that weird wormhole-y thing he was in at the end. They actually did that. They made that, and I think that's cool. And just knowing that was real, and I could tell it felt more real when he was in there because he was interacting with it. But yeah, so Fantastic Four, huh? Any more comments on that? Do you like the darker
way they're going at it, or it seems to be anyway?
I wouldn't say they're going darker at it. It just seems more. It seems more serious. I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
The first one, it looked really lighthearted. I mean, the preview for it, I remember everyone was like, "Oh, that looks okay." Whereas in this one, it's like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the transformation between these goes down between the characters in the movie.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really look like they're in space or they get hit with cosmic rays and.
Sure. Yeah. How do you feel about Dr. Doom seeming to be like an angry blogger instead of the traditional Victor Von Doom backstory? It is, I mean,
I think I'm okay with that, kind of in a way, because the original one was just so. Oh, he was just so over the top cheesy. It was like he would. If James Bond had taken on a villain like this, it totally would have fit in with the movies from the 60s and 70s, I think.
Yeah. And I think that is the director. Those Fantastic Four movies, that was the thing that hurt him the most, was that they just felt really cheesy. Which can work in the right context, but in what they were doing, it just came across funny. And it made you, like, kind of hate the Fantastic Four, which they're, like, Marvel's first family.
Yeah.
You shouldn't hate them, but people do now. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with this. We'll just move on here. My number 5, and I honestly don't really have much to say about this. It's really in my top 5, just because, in my opinion, Pixar has been on a hiatus for a while. Just because I wasn't a huge fan of Brave, and that was kind of their more original thing lately. It was, they had Monsters University, which was kind of a sequel, and that had moments that were good and stuff. But, Inside Out is coming out June 19th, and I'm really hoping this could be Pixar's return to kind of their cool original stories they do, having these 5 emotions inside of a girl's head, and seeing how they do it. And I think they picked good people to be those emotions. You got Lewis Black being the angry one, and Amy Poehler being the overly joyful one. And
I think they picked very obvious choices.
Well, they're obvious. I mean, they're really obvious. But at the same time, because it's a cartoon, the obvious choices might be a good thing,
Yeah.
Because you're not going to, it would be annoying, if you saw Amy Poehler the whole movie. But since she's just the voice of something that's being animated, it might be okay. But I'm just excited because I'm really hoping it's kind of Pixar's return to good original stories. Like their, Monsters Inc., Toy Story, Incredibles, just those type of stories. So we'll see if that works. Number 4 for you, Dakota. What do you got?
The number 4 picked for me is the movie Pan,
and that comes out.
July 24th.
July 24th, yeah. Pan. So I know I heard you're talking about being excited. How that's one of your childhood's things that are coming back this summer. Yeah. So what are you excited about with that then?
Oh well, I really like the cast they have pulled together for this one. And it looks really I like the style they're going with for this. It's seems more like a swashbuckling tale than a fantasy movie, and I think it might actually be fun. Yeah,
the fact that the trailer that they came out with, that first trailer, that it looks like the old swashbuckle adventure. I'm definitely with you on that one, and how in a certain sense, Garrett Hedlund, however you say his name, who's going to be James Hook.
A young James.
Young James Hook, right? Kind of friends with Peter in this. It seems to be.
Still has both hands, by the way.
And still has all his fingies. But I think how he kind of looks like in that swashbuckling atmosphere. How he looks like the Douglas Fairbanks of the movie. How he just seems like the swordplay action guy of the movie. And then of course you got Hugh the Huge Jackman. as, was it Blackbeard, right? He's being...
Yep.
And how he just seems like he's just totally going for it. I mean, being willing to shave his head is usually an actor's commitment to a role. Usually the ways you can tell the actor's commitment to a role is their willingness to gain weight or to shave their heads. Those seem to be like the two telltale signs where everybody goes, well, they're really committed. I mean, he put on 60 pounds, you know, or, you know, Russell Crowe, he's always adding weight and losing weight. And,
well, with Hugh Jackman, I think he's just one of those guys that completely jumps into their character head first and just pretty much is just like, oh, well, I think this is how it should be.
Yeah. If he's... That's the thing. If he's in a movie, you can tell he wants to be in that movie. And sometimes you can tell when people are phoning it in, and it seems like he must not phone it as often, because usually, like, when he's in stuff, he's there to be in it. You know, he wants to be there. It's funny, because, like, my best example of someone who didn't look like they wanted to be there would be Spider-Man 3, Kirsten Dunst. She absolutely was like, I don't want to be here. They made me finish this trilogy. I don't know, I just felt like she wasn't in that. And maybe it was because she saw the storyboarding of the scene where Peter goes, like, goth emo, and she was like, oh, God, I have to be a part of this. I don't know. Anyway.
Well.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
You're...
So, Pan.
Oh. I don't know why you had to bring that up.
Everybody loves that. My number 4 is actually, I believe, competing with your Pan movie, because I think it comes out on July 24th also. My number 4 is Pixels.
Oh.
And you probably think I'm crazy for having this in my top 5, but gosh darn it, it's in my top 5, and it's because I want this movie to desperately work so bad. I am disregarding the fact that Adam Sandler's involved in, probably in that regards, Happy Madison Productions, and just hoping that the Christopher Columbus magic, since he's directing it, comes through more so than the Adam Sandler magic. I don't know if you can call it Adam Sandler does magic. I just like this idea of aliens opening the 1982 time capsule and thinking those are the things they're going to use as weapons against us, and it's just kind of ridiculous. I like the scene where the aliens are coming down. It's like the mushrooms and bugs from Centipede, and they're just blasting in the air. It's just ridiculous. And they drive Mini Coopers as the Pac-Man goes, and I don't know. I want it to work because it looks funny and cool.
I should probably bring this up why I do not want to see this movie. It's pretty much ripping off a Futurama episode where Fry asked this computer what life would be like if video games were real, and it put out this scenario where Earth was invaded by these aliens, and it was via 1980s arcade games. It was a good episode, but I don't know, it's just...
In my defense, I have seen 5 minutes of Futurama total. So I can't say I was jaded by a Futurama episode, but that's interesting that, in a certain sense, things like this have been done before. Because you could even say that it's kind of like Tron in the real world, in a certain sense also, where it's like they're fighting the computer machine. I mean, obviously in this, it sounds like it's aliens, but it's that same kind of idea in a certain sense. But most things are just kind of repackaged old things. So,
what are you really trying to say?
What I'm really trying to say, Dakota, is that I desperately want this movie to be good, and you're making me feel bad now. Anyway, let's move on to numbers. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Jurassic World.
Oh, so you're going to make fun of me for repackaging and ripping off old things, and then you have in your top 5 Jurassic World. Actually, it's in my top 5 too. Anyway, Jurassic World.
I couldn't help myself. Anything Jessica Chastain's in, I just gotta see it. I don't know why.
Is she in Jurassic World? Bryce Dallas Howard's in it.
Oh my
God.
God.
Redhead.
Whoa.
How dare you?
In my defense, they look very familiar.
They do.
Are you serious? I thought it was Jessica Chastain.
No, it's Bryce Dallas Howard. But it's funny, now that you say that, and I picture them both in my head, and they're both in The Help, they're both...
That's right.
they're both redheads, and they both kind of have butt chins. And so it's funny that you actually what I noticed in the Jurassic World trailer, speaking of Bryce Dallas Howard in previous works, was that in the Jurassic World trailer, I don't know if she's saying it to Chris Pratt's character, but she yells, "Run!" And I was like, that sounds really familiar. So I quick YouTube Lady in the Water trailer. She says the same thing in Lady in the Water, except with a Cleveland in front of it. She goes, "Cleveland, run!" And it's like, she just uses "run" in every movie. I mean, I guess it's like one of the most common Hollywood things probably yelled in action movies is "run."
Actually,
but it was,
I believe that's "let's get out of here."
Yeah, let's get out of here, baby. That's true. But it was just funny how I think it was just like her face. It was like the same shot. It's just that in one she was a mermaid thing, and in this one she's like some sort of CEO. So you're excited about this reboot? Well, I don't know if it's a reboot. It's more of a sequel, I guess.
Yeah.
Is how they're kind of, because the park is now open. Yeah, I'm excited for it too. I'm not gonna lie. I love the Jurassic Park world. When I saw the Jurassic World trailer, I said they stole my idea. This is what they're doing is what I wanted them to do in Jurassic Park 3, was have a park that actually worked and kind of, have that aspect of it and do things and go from there. And instead we got what Jurassic Park 3 is, which is kind of an annoying movie with Tay Leone.
Yeah.
But
so you were hoping for like a Westworld with dinosaurs, is what you're telling me?
well, that's kind of what Michael Crichton did. Anyway. So besides fake Jessica Chastain, what else are you excited about Jurassic World?
Really? I don't know. I'm curious. I'm more curious to see what they do with this one. I mean, Jurassic Park 3. It was okay. Nowhere near as good as 1 or 2.
Right.
But it's kind of one of those things where just like, I love the first 2 so much. I just got to see what they do here.
You want it to be good, even though the Goldblum won't be there to flare his chest.
Yeah.
Speaking of guys flaring chests, what do you feel about Chris Pratt? Are you okay with him being like the new action guy?
I think I am. Mostly because he's like a really buff Harrison Ford, pretty much.
Yeah, which...
And I like Harrison Ford. I mean, sure, right now, he's a cranky old man who's prone to accidents.
Yeah, man! That dude, they talk about, every movie he's involved in, he somehow hurts himself, including the new Star Wars, and then he crashes a plane. But, yeah, he's falling apart. But, yeah, what you're saying there, yeah, he kind of is. But what makes Chris Pratt, in a certain sense, I don't know if I want to say better than Harrison Ford, but he feels more real just because the way Chris Pratt always presents himself in his roles, he just feels like the everyday guy, even though you still buy him as that character, he still feels like just a normal guy. And I feel like you get more invested in Guardians of the Galaxy. I felt like I get really invested into him, just because you felt like you could be him or something. Like, if I were abducted, I could have been Star-Lord. You don't have to be all creepy or something, but it's like he just feels like your everyday guy in a certain sense. I just hope that this Jurassic World isn't just him going into everything now and he totally doesn't work. But yeah, hopefully he works. We'll see how the training of the raptors goes. That was kind of weird in the trailer where he has bloodhound raptors, come help me, raptors. But yeah, my number 3 is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Boo.
July 31st that comes out. I don't know. I am quick to say that I am by no means a Tom Cruise fanboy, but for some reason, the Mission Impossible series, I like those movies. Mission Impossible 2 isn't the greatest. There's just way too many slow-mo shots and birds flying in slow-mo and things like that. But
wait, was that the John
John Woo.
Yeah,
that was the John
I was
Woo
like,
one.
wait a minute. That sounds so familiar.
The only good thing that came out of Mission Impossible 2 was it was when Ben Stiller started acting like he was Tom Cruise's stuntman, who was also named Tom Cruise but spelled differently, and that was some funny stuff. But otherwise, Mission Impossible 2 wasn't the greatest. But otherwise, once Mission Impossible 3 came around, and you could say it got the J.J. Abrams, they did a little J.J. Abrams directed, and it kind of had his feel to it. I felt like that series kind of got paddled back a little bit, and I thought that movie worked. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And then Ghost Protocol came out, and I couldn't believe it. I thought Ghost Protocol was possibly the best in the series, and it was the fourth one, and it's where Tom Cruise is like 50, by that point, or whatever he was, practically almost 50 probably, because now he is over 50, I think. I don't know.
Still looks like he's in his 30s though.
Yeah, it's those cap teeth in Scientology that are keeping him young. But
or he sold his soul to Satan. Could go either way.
Either way, it's hard to know with that crazy cat. So yeah, he's kind of goofy. But anyway, I thought Ghost Protocol was possibly the best in the series, and so that's why I'm excited to see what they do next in that vein. We'll see how this new director goes. He's kind of a guy who's known more for his writing than his directing.
Who is directing?
It's that Christopher McQuarrie, who he wrote things like The Usual Suspects.
Oh, okay.
And I think he's written, I should say, a couple or three of Bryan Singer's movies, like Usual Suspects, Valkyrie.
Yeah.
And now he's starting to get into directing, and so we'll see if he can handle that. But from the trailer that came out, I'm in. I guess I'm in. Rogue Nation looks pretty cool, and Tom Cruise says that the whole hanging outside the airplane stunt he did himself, like he did the Dubai Tower in the fourth one, was one of the hardest stunts he's ever done, if not the hardest. And so it's kind of cool how it's another thing where I think what I like about it is how they try to do these things practically in reality, and not just that. It's not a double, the actor is actually doing it, he's actually doing it.
What I'm amazed by is he does all his own stunts and everything, and has he ever been seriously hurt?
I mean, I think it seemed like something did happen to it. Didn't something happen to him when he was on the Dubai Tower? I think he pulled something, but yeah, in terms of you're talking broken bones. I think I heard that on the set of Edge of Tomorrow, where he's in the exoskeleton suit, and when they were filming the shot where that missile comes and blows up next to him and it shoots him back, that he almost died.
Yeah.
Doing that, and so I think he's had the close to, the close calls. Well, yeah, I don't know. He's not like Jackie Chan, who seems to get hurt all the time, when he'd do his movies. But
some of these actors that do that, though, it seems like they kind of end up hurting themselves bad. I know in one of the James Bond movies, it's the one where they're in China. He's dangling off a building, and apparently he completely just messed up his shoulder, because that was him just hanging off the building. And apparently he was having problems years after. And I know other actors have just, completely kind of messed up parts of their bodies doing their own stunts. But
yeah,
he seems to just kind of bounce back, and every movie he runs 10 miles.
It's his old choppy arm run. It just got me thinking. You almost wonder if maybe part of the reason Tom Cruise doesn't get injured is that he's, in terms of the stunts, he's in charge of, he produces his movies. He's the one who picks a lot of the locations. He likes to be in charge of things, and so maybe the reason he doesn't get hurt is because he knows exactly what's coming. Whereas sometimes these actors, they're not really involved except they go, okay, hook me in, and then they just get whipped and oh, my ankle, or something, or oh, my neck. Whereas Tom Cruise, he always knows exactly what's going on. The Dubai Tower, was his idea. I think he's invested to a point where he knows what he needs to do to prepare. And to that I give him credit, even though, like I said, most of his other movies I don't really care for so much, other than this Mission Impossible series. And Edge of Tomorrow was actually a really good summer movie last year that a lot of people overlooked.
Yeah.
And you should check that out. It is pretty decent. I mean, you could call it a sci-fi Groundhog Day, but at the same time, it's still a fun movie. I thought so. I don't know if you thought it was fun, but
yeah, I thought no, it was certainly a pretty big movie, which I love the the multiple times you see the invasion scene done so many different ways.
Yeah.
It was like
him waking up every day, where they had that scene where the I don't know if it was the drill sergeant or the sergeant's like, maggot, 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 like everybody's getting yelled at it, maggot. Yeah, that was pretty funny. And Bill Paxton was he was the drill sergeant. Bill Paxton, or no, he wasn't. Was it a colonel or?
No, he was master sergeant.
Maybe his master sergeant. Anyway, Bill Paxton fit his role pretty well. Is just kind of the over the top military guy. Yeah. With a lot less potty language that he does in Aliens, when he's the Space Marine in Aliens. But
that's one thing I liked about that movie. There was like a lot of kind of reminded me of other good sci-fi movies, and Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it had that kind of World War II feel in a certain sense. But yeah, so yeah, that's how. So anyway, yeah. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, I just have high hopes for. So we'll move on here to number 2, where we always keep babbling, but that's okay. What do you got?
Number 2 is Terminator Genisys.
Terminator Genisys. All right. Why? And I don't mean it like why, but just why.
Because it has the actress that plays Daenerys Targaryen.
So you want to see it just because there's a Game of Thrones person in it? There has to be a bigger reason than that.
No, that's one of the reasons why.
Is it because there's a Doctor Who in it? That's your reason.
No, not at all. I don't even know what this guy looks like. But no, I'm just kind of excited to see how they do this. It jumps around a lot in the Terminator universe, and it involves the events of the first movie, which you saw in the trailer. The original Terminator, played by Arnold.
Right, you got Arnie coming back.
Then him and the senior Terminator battle it out, which should be interesting how they do that.
It should be like those things. You're hoping it'll make it good, but at the same time, it feels like it's the Days of Future Past of Terminator movies, where we want to fix our wrongs and be able to start over and go where we want to go. What I get worried about is this going to be the new out for writers on movies where they're like, well, if we ever get stuck in a corner, we'll just have a time travel movie and fix everything. You just don't want that to happen either all the time. But in that regard, I mean, Terminator Genisys, I hope it works, but
I think they're doing this too, because the last one pretty much left off in the future when they were actually fighting Terminators.
Yeah. Mick G should not be allowed to direct movies. That is just my opinion. I mean, We Are Marshall is the only one I think I can stomach, and that wasn't even an action movie. Maybe he should just stay away from action movies, because Charlie's Angels are terrible, and whatnot. I'm just going to throw in whatnot. Sling it in there. We're going to move on here. My number 2 is Jurassic World, which we've already pretty much dissected apart, I think, till there's nothing left. It's my number 2 just because I'm kind of the same boat as you. It's childhood. I love Jurassic Park. That movie just, I don't know. I was 8-ish when I saw that. And I think Jurassic Park is really one of the reasons I started to love movies the way I did. Was just like, that movie was so, amazing. And the special effects are still amazing when you go back and watch it.
Yeah, it was one of those movies where, if you really think about it, not a lot happened, but it was so big. And
yeah, it was a really simple story, but you still knew everybody's names, which in my opinion is a good way to know if you actually were invested. Like the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, you knew everybody's names because you're really invested into them and you cared about the story. Whereas it seems like with the Hobbit trilogy, I was like, I don't know, it's like Balin or Philly. Who cares? You know, it was just like you weren't quite as invested. But with Jurassic Park, like you said, even though the story was, you know, in a sense took a backseat to the amazement of it all, you still kind of cared about everybody except for Gennaro. Got eaten off a toilet.
One of the greatest gags ever in any movie.
Still awesome. What's funny is that would be a classic scene where when you're a kid, you picture it that he was actually pooping. And then I go back and watch it now, it's like, oh, his pants were up. He was just in there hiding. I don't know why as a kid I thought, oh, he ran away scared from the T-Rex and decided to take a dump. You know, it's like, for some reason I always had him with his pants down, and then you get older and you realize he was just sitting in there hiding because he's a weasel. Which, yeah, it's still a funny scene, still one of the greatest movie deaths. Just because, again, it was like, it felt like a guy actually got eaten by a dinosaur. And it still feels that way when you watch it. It's just, like I said, I think it's just one of the reasons I love movies so much. And that, like you said, I think that comes out June 12th. So we'll move on. We're going to go over some honorable mentions before we get to number one. Dakota, you have any that didn't make your top 5 that you're still kind of looking forward to?
Yeah.
Let's touch.
I only really have one, and that's because I was a huge fan of the video games, the upcoming Hitman movie.
Okay.
And
that was a pretty popular video game series. I think I didn't really play it, but
yeah, it was pretty fun. And then that last movie, the original movie, I should say, just
left a bad taste in your mouth. You didn't like Oliphant?
No, not a huge fan of his, and it was just I don't know, weird storyline, and they just loaded it with as much fighting and shooting as they could, and it was, they could have trimmed so much from that movie. They could have turned that entire story of that movie into a 15-minute movie.
It's always good when, during your description of a movie, you go, ugh.
Well, I was just thinking about the entire storyline, and it's too much. It's too much going on. At some point in time, you have assassins turning on each other, even though they're brothers.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Right.
Why are they just randomly killing each other?
Nobody knows. Okay, you need anything else? We'll just kind of touch these.
Ant-Man, I am ashamed to say, but
don't be ashamed. I mean, I think you're in the same boat as me, where you like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm assuming, as mostly, which I do. Yeah. I like the Marvel Cinematic. Yep. You say it with a little more. I know you're more of a DC guy.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But it's like it's like one, you just want it to work, but at the same time you don't like, me, and I think we've talked about this before. We did Paul Rudd, just kind of not sure about that, and the fact that him and the guy who wrote Anchorman got to go back and rewrite the script really worries me about where it could go. So I don't know.
It could work, but I mean, it could be just like not every movie is gonna be The Godfather. I mean, it could be just like a fun little movie to watch, but
and that's the thing. Marvel is claiming that it's gonna be a heist movie. This was before, I don't know, I've heard rumors of some reshooting, but it's supposed to be a heist movie that has the superhero element around that. It's kind of like their new thing Marvel's doing in this phase, whatever phase they're in now, 2, I think is what they're in, where the Winter Soldier was first and foremost a political thriller that was superhero on the side, and now, this is a heist movie with superhero to the side, and it's kind of like Kevin Feige's way of saying, well, we don't just want to keep throwing out comic book things, but let's actually give them a story, and so, yeah.
I think the only reservation I have about this movie is just the fact, the director, and of course, Paul Rudd. I mean,
yeah, you got the director of Yes Man, and Paul Rudd. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, any other? Would that be your honorable mentions?
I think that is it as of now.
Okay. Yeah, mine are, I have Ant-Man as honorable mention. Mostly same reasons, you just tentative about the director, Paul Rudd. And yeah, I mean, we'll just see. Anyway, Terminator Genesis is one of my honorable mentions, which we talked about already. Tomorrowland. I don't think we talked about that one yet.
Is George Clooney actually in that movie, or?
Yeah, he's the scientist that's in Tomorrowland. I think he's the one that.
Okay.
He's the one that made Tomorrowland as a place to discover and do experiment. I don't know if he's like Dr. Moreau or what, but more the reason I want it to be good is just the fact that Brad Bird wrote and directed it, and I like Brad Bird's stuff. I like Incredibles. We talked about Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol. He wrote and directed that. I liked The Iron Giant. It's just I think I want it to work just because I like Brad Bird, and I'm hoping he'll make it work. That comes out May 22nd. Pan, one of my honorable mentions. Fantastic Four. One we haven't talked about is one of my honorable mentions, and I think it's on here mostly because I have kids. Is Minions. July 10th. I honestly have pretty low expectations for this. I like the Despicable Me's, but can the Minions actually hold up their own movie? Or are they just a supporting character? This is the mistake movies have made in the past, giving a supporting character their own movie. Can you think of a time where that's worked really well, Dakota? A supporting character getting their own movie?
Actually, I can.
Uh-oh, what do you got? What do you got? I want to hear it.
Silence of the Lambs. And I say that because in the movie Manhunter, Hannibal Lecter, very, very minor role.
It's true. Yeah, I get what you mean, because...
I think his entire screen time is probably about 6-7 minutes.
Yeah, because in the Manhunter Red Dragon story, which is before Silence of the Lambs, the events, he's minimal, because he's just kind of helping, what's William Peterson's?
Will Graham.
Will Graham, thank you. He's helping Will Graham figure out the case, and he's pretty minimal, but it's one of those characters that you'll want to know more about. In fact, I still would like to know more about Brian Cox, Hannibal Lecter. I just thought he felt more sinister and evil than Anthony Hopkins. Always felt like he's kind of overacting as Hannibal, in my opinion. But
yeah, and he'll admit it. I mean,
yeah, he'll admit it now that he won an Oscar.
But, well, that's a character, but I can't think of anyone continuing to play one where it did really well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but I can't think of anything super notable, where it wasn't just like a continuing of the series, but, like an actual case here where they get their own movie, just like, and I mean, it's still gonna, in a certain sense, involve Gru, because it's what the Minions did leading up to finding and being Gru's minions. And so we'll see. I don't know. I just worry about if a supporting character like the Minions who don't even speak English can have their own movie. But I kind of want it to work just in terms of, because I'll have to watch it a lot, because my children will probably want to watch it a lot. And so, for the love of everything, please work, because I'm going to have to see this thing.
Here's something to keep in mind, though. There's a reason why the Ewoks never got their own Star Wars movie.
The Ewok adventure movies.
Oh, good one.
And they weren't very good. Wilford Brimley, ladies and gentlemen, he was in one of those with that little blonde curly-haired girl. I can't even remember.
I forgot those things were even made. Oh,
yeah, well, it was kind of like the Christmas special where I think Lucas hopes you forget about them. Anyway, yeah, Minions. So number 1. We better get there, otherwise this podcast is going to be like 4 hours long. What's your number 1, Dakota?
Well, I believe it's the same as yours, so shall we both go on 3?
Ready? This is kind of, I feel kind of weird. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Avengers Age of Ultron. There you go. Avengers Age of Ultron is, of course, both of our number 1s, because if you haven't figured it out by now, this far into it, we're both comic book nerds. Dakota probably more so than I am. I'm kind of a bandwagoner in a way where I didn't realize the magic of comic books till they were brought to the silver screen. And then it kind of got me into reading them more and understanding more of the characters and realizing that they're a very worthwhile thing to read. They have stories that are deeper than most books you'll probably read in your life, especially if you read Nicholas Sparks or Veronica Roth or Stephanie Meyer, and dare I say, J.K. Rowling. They're just very good storylines in those, and it's just got me to like these movies even more. I try not to be too much of a purist with these movies.
You know, back to that whole comic book thing. I've always thought this was funny. People talk about how they're so melodramatic. I still don't think some of them are as melodramatic as Victor Hugo's work.
That's true. That's true.
Hunchback of Notre Dame. Easily.
There's a lot of classics that are, yeah, I know what you mean, that are way more so. Yeah. But anyway, Avengers Age of Ultron is both of our number ones, mostly because, it's just, I mean, for the most part, we like the superhero movies. And then just, I don't know, like, how did you feel about the first Avengers?
I thought it was actually pretty good.
And did you think, like, the way they led up to it, did you think all that worked for the most part?
Yeah.
You know, you had your little hiccup with the Hulk, you know, the recast. But.
Well, you went, if you follow those movies, you went in kind of understanding where they were all coming from. It's not like, oh, it's this random group of people just showed up that you knew nothing about, but you were...
Yeah.
For the most part, it was pretty easy to follow. And then, I don't know, the villain in the first one really kind of made it. I mean, Loki.
Yeah,
mischief.
Very good actor plays Loki. It actually, he in a sense, even though Chris Hemsworth, I think, really is a very good embodiment of Thor, Tom Hiddleston has kind of almost, which is funny because Loki's whole thing is that Thor's always overshadowing him, and it's almost like in our world of watching the movies, in a lot of people's eyes, Loki overshadows Thor in that a lot of people love Loki more than Thor, and they like want Loki to come back as often as possible, which is kind of ridiculous in my opinion. But
well, the guy has charisma.
Yeah, he does. He's British. He's British. Yeah, I was one where I loved the Avengers. I went on opening weekend. I was in a theater full of people excited. There was a kid in front of me dressed like Thor. It was just a fun movie. It was fun. And when it was over, you're like, that was fun. You know, you could still say that. And then, of course, the after credits shawarma scene just added to the funniness. But, I'm one who can go back and rewatch the Avengers and still like it. There's people who say it doesn't have rewatchability. I think it does.
Well, the story, you know, it does fall apart, but I don't think that takes away from what's going on. I mean...
Yeah. I mean, I think because they got such great people to be everybody, for the most part. I mean, you know, your people have their qualms with... Well, it seems like mostly with maybe Scarlett Johansson and things like that. But I think she's okay as Black Widow. I mean, I think she's fine.
It's cool, too, because you actually get to see these people act. Every single character has their own moment where you get to find out what's going on with them. I mean,
yeah, everybody had their moment. Joss Whedon did a good job of doing that.
Which is what he's kind of known for. I mean,
right.
Firefly, Buffy, Angel. I mean, that's just what he does. He's pretty good at it. But one of the biggest surprises of the Avengers was probably Hawkeye. I mean, that's a guy who he briefly showed up before in the other Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Knew nothing about him. At the end of the movie, you're kind of rooting for him, like. Oh.
And it's funny because he gets to be one of the superheroes when really all he can do is shoot arrows really straight. And I know you do end up liking him. You want him to come back. You want him to have a bigger role than just brainwash most of the movie like he was in the first one. And I think Joss Whedon, you could say like, well, he has to figure out a way to top it. But it's not even so much topping as I just hope that he's able to continue their story well. And honestly, I guarantee he had the Ultron idea, far back where he knew that was the logical place to go next. You know, introducing Vision will be cool into the mix too. With Paul Bettany, the voice of Jarvis, being Vision, which makes me think that, maybe Tony must have used his computer system to create Vision in that sense, and so that's why it has Jarvis's voice. And
who is it doing the voice of Ultron?
James Spader.
James Spader. He's kind of having a comeback here, isn't he?
He is, and honestly, that was an inspired choice for Ultron because that trailer, between the fact that they totally made me like freak out to hearing There Are No Strings on Me song from Pinocchio. They did it really creepy. And then having James Spader's voice talking about he's free now and you know, basically going to start causing havoc, and is that's a pretty chilling preview, and I think it really set the tone where you start going, oh my gosh, I think somebody's going to die by the end of this movie. At least one Avenger may die by the end of this movie.
And when you do finally see him, I mean, Ultron does look pretty demonic with those. It looks like he has horns and glowing red eyes.
They gave him, because he has the look that you like when you look at him, you know it's Ultron. If you know the comics, he looks like Ultron. But the way, he's got that glow in the head. How they did that, he does look a lot more. There's a kind of more modern, sinister look to him, and so that's that's easily. This is probably the top of nearly everybody's list for summer of movie they either are excited for or they hope will be good, or better be good because it's supposed to be good.
I think there's only one foreseeable problem I have with this movie, and that is Quicksilver, who has already showed up.
Very excellently done, too. I thought Quicksilver in the X-Men movie.
By Evan Peters.
Yes, Evan Peters.
He pretty much he was like the breakout star of that X-Men movie.
Yes. Being
redone by another actor. A lot of people are going to go in there with expectations like, oh, he's going to be just like he was in this movie. And it's like, no.
Right. Yeah, and... Right. And the thing, too, is I think in a certain sense people have expectations on just how a speedy person is because of The Flash also being such a hit TV show, too. And then, again, with the Justice League movie obviously coming soon, there's just a lot... there's going to be all these speedy people now. And it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. But yeah, having two different actors because of fighting studios over rights and who can say the word mutant and who's allowed to say who Quicksilver's father is and all these ridiculous things that just whatever. But I don't know. Aaron Taylor Johnson, I believe is his name, who's playing.
Yeah.
He's one where he could be good. We'll see. So that's it. That's our movies. We're looking forward to. I'm sure we hit on a lot of ones that you could be looking forward to, unless you're really into independent movies.
And hopefully we got you a little informed about what's going on.
Yeah, hopefully we didn't babble too much. We weren't, like I said, we're testing this out. It's gonna be a little longer podcast than I anticipated anyway on about Dakota. But it's hard to say. I don't know if all of our ones will be this long. This one we ended up going over a lot of material, just because of talking about basically 15 different movies in a sense. We'll see how our average podcast that we're planning on doing every few weeks will be, where we'll talk about mostly just one movie that we'll have seen in theaters. That'll be kind of the main gist of the podcast, is we're going to talk to you about the movies we see, and hopefully you care. Well, that's all from us this time. I think we've held you up long enough. Any last words, Dakota?
Yeah, don't take any wooden nickels.
Thanks, Grandpa. Well, that's, like I said, that's it for us. Have a good one, people. And remember, fish are friends, not food.